and we can start whenever. So, hi, Matt. Thanks for being on. Really happy to chat with you again.
Hey Shay, thanks for having me.
No problem. So I had a podcast idea before, and that was at the tail end of 2019, and it was going to go into 2020, where I had people in my truck who were driving around having a coffee, and obviously that didn't work out. But you were my first guest on that one, and then everything kind of got kiboshed in 2020 with pretty much everything else. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm I'm happy to have you on as my first guest again, and yeah, the whole core concept of this is just talking to my friends and people whose work I admire. And tell me a little bit about like what makes you tick and the work that you tick. So for anyone who doesn't know, Matt Barton is one of the guys behind the scenes at Rebellion Brewing in Regina, and does a lot of the marketing work and social. And you kind of wear a lot of hats there, don't you?
yeah, we're a small shop, so jack of all trades at all times. I formally am known as the communications manager, but it's not beneath me to go deliver beer, help package beer, working on the the canning line from time to time. But primarily, I'm working on creating the marketing and the social media materials that are going up for Rebellion.
I think that's one of the craziest things, and it's not just necessarily you, but Mark, who we'll get to in a little bit here. But Mark is also a guy who just goes on the canning line and does whatever needs to get done. And watching you guys step up to the plate as the management, quote unquote, if you were to look at the regular hierarchy, and being able to help out is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a small business, you really don't have that choice. uh, the beer doesn't show up if no one shows up to work. And with COVID, we've had tons of bumps where maybe somebody had to take time off for an exposure, or they did get sick, or we're just short bodies. And so when you can step in, it shows that you're not above everybody else and you want to be connected to the rest of the crew. And everybody just really appreciates it when anyone can chip in. And it's not just me helping others. A lot of ideas for the photos and memes come from our staff. I'm always asking them to give me their flavor and take. So it's a really collaborative process with everything we do.
I hate the term family, like work family, when you're talking about work, but I really feel like you guys are a family when it comes down to it. You're just such good friends. You work together that way. And I think that's probably a lot with the leadership in the company.
Culture has been something that Mark has focused on from day one. It A lot of the hiring decisions that were made, a lot of the team that was assembled was kind of like Nick Fury going around and saying, "You have these talents, and he has those talents, and together you guys can pull off something great. You just have to get along." And and we've also put in a lot of work. We've had leadership coaching and team building sessions, and it's not just a video on a little TV back in the day where they'd put you in a room and say, "Watch this for 30 minutes," and you've got culture. Like, that's not culture.
Yeah,
But
I love how less than 4 minutes in, you already made your first nerd reference, and I'm not going to talk about the board games and stuff you have behind you, but I know you're a huge nerd, and that's reflected in a lot of the stuff that you try to bring a little bit of personality.
that's one of the great things about Rebellion too. We all get to geek out in our own way. For Mark, it's a lot about music, and he wears a lot of it on his sleeves, literally with his tattoos. He's also been exceedingly open and tolerant of failure and risk, letting us try tons of different things and throwing everything at the wall and sees what sticks. Whether that's beer or social media, I think it's one of our strengths is we're willing to try new things and flex. And sometimes we get pie on our face, but most of the time we're learning and getting stronger every time.
I really like that. Yeah. Speaking of characters and strength of character, Mark being a character in himself, do you feel like you have to rein him in sometimes, or is part of your success because of how out there he is?
I don't have to rein Mark in. He's got a pretty good sense of who he is and why he does what he does. I think some people have hard time separating the character from who Mark is as a human being, and that's okay. That's if you look at WWE wrestling and you understand how Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage and all those guys kind of operate, you'll get a deeper insight into what Mark is trying to create and do. You have to be larger than life, especially when you're a small business and you're trying to make a splash. When you don't have a ton of money, you want attention. You've got to go big and you've got to have personality. And Mark brings it. From my perspective, I'm behind the camera. I can pick and choose the lessons that he's brought me. He's like a big brother in that sense, or a coach. He's shown me how to bring more personality to the things I'm working on or the pieces I contribute. And that kind of that alchemy is it's rare. It's hard to find. I try to support his ideas or anybody else's ideas too. When people come to me to try and pitch an idea, I never say no immediately. I will start with who's the audience? What are you trying to say? Really help them focus it in so they don't feel like I'm not listening. Um, it's more about will this work with the budget we have? And sometimes it's too ambitious. We can't afford the big ideas. Other times, we've been able to pull off something amazing for peanuts, for pennies on the dollar. And it's just a continual process.
I really admire that sense of individuality and the lack of fear in being yourself, and that's one thing I try to do with whatever I do business wise. Is I spent so much time with stuffy polos and ties and suits, and that's just not the way of the world anymore. So I feel more comfortable being able to do that, I guess, since I'm the boss on one side of things, but because there are people like Mark out there who are really highly respected. I like to think of it as like, D. Schneider talking in front of Congress. I think of that the exact same way. This guy who's well spoken, has a lot of business acumen, and is he knows what he's talking about, but doesn't necessarily look like the kind that could talk these suits under the bus.
I think that's like his own millstone that he carries around with him. 5 years ago, when we'd walk into board meetings, they'd look at him and his clothes and his style, and they'd be like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And really, I would say about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the pendulum started to swing the other direction, and they said, "Pay attention to the guy in the cowboy hat and the leather pants. He looks weird, but he's got lots of great ideas and amazing things to say." And really what I've noticed after this whole 2020 pandemic, Mark's becoming like a thought leader within our sphere, specifically like beer, agritourism, local activism within like community improvement, like getting crosswalks across the street or something like that. The suits don't look at him anymore and say write him off. They're like, okay, watch out. This guy, he's really, really smart, and you've got to pay attention to what he's saying because he's right a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, and like I know you get a lot of good press now. It was probably a little bit of a slog, and I think you're well respected amongst the people who've tried your beer. That's easy to say, but the one thing that is evident whenever you're on social media, not just with you guys, but everywhere, there's always going to be people talking negatively. And I know that you don't necessarily spend a lot of time on Reddit, but when we've had discussions, you're always on there kind of watching and monitoring, and any kind of avenue where you guys are going to show up on like social, you're there. So what do you do when you see any kind of negative press or negative social engagement from just general users?
General users, it depends. If it's direct feedback on a specific concern about the quality of the product, I might reach out to them and say, "Hey, let's do some quality assurance here. Let's figure out and solve this problem. Maybe I can make you happy today. Maybe I can turn it around for you." If it's really unfounded criticism and the person clearly doesn't know what they're talking about, You just don't need to engage them. And frankly, 99% of our interaction is positive. When it comes to the media, getting coverage from maybe what you might call traditional mainstream media, um, everything has been really deliberate. I used to be a journalist. That's part of my background. I understand how they think, what they need. I'm always thinking about lighting and the time constraints of being a journalist where you've got to push out 4 to 5 stories in a day. You don't have that kind of time to deep dive necessarily on craft beer. But if I can bring you all those key points, talking messages, get you the photos and the video clips, that just makes their job that much easier to then engage with us. It also means just being ready to take their call and return their email quickly. And people don't understand that necessarily, but um, when a journalist reaches out to us or somebody reaches out to us for media purposes, whether they're tourism or travel writer, it's hair on fire time. And it's like, don't make this person wait. Be professional. Get back to them as quick as possible. And what happens is when you're the first through the door in terms of engaging with these pieces, you get more coverage and you build trust and relationships. And then they can not just call you about beer, but now they're calling Mark about his opinions on local things happening in the city, um, the new agriculture stuff coming out, the restrictions for the pandemic. He's now seen as a trusted business leader with reasonable, good opinions about what the lockdown would do to the businesses and what is it going to look like when we reopen, or what's happening in the aluminum market for cans. So it builds up and out. And I know a lot of people see journalism and meet the media as like the enemy or perhaps something not to be trusted. I've never treated it like that. I see journalists as like society's immune system. They're the canary in the coal mine in the early warning system. And if you treat them with respect and like humans, and you don't automatically assume they have an agenda of malice, you can build a meaningful relationship with them. Uh, and you can then turn that into positive coverage that's not necessarily selling, but it's about being a member of a community and a responsible partner within the community. And it just grows from there.
I think that's something that, definitely going to have you on again, but I want to definitely touch on that on another time frame, because I think that engagement with the media or the press, any kind of reporters, is something that you really need to grasp and have a really good understanding of, so that it's not going to backfire on you.
you know, there's always a risk of backfire, but I think people overstate the risk and are overly hostile for unfounded reasons.
Well,
If you
sorry, not
don't manage it
necessarily.
well,
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. What I'm thinking is people overthinking it. Like when you're talking to a friend in high school who has never, dated at all, and they're like, "Oh, do I call a girl back, or what do I do?" She sent me a text. Do I wait the 3 days? What do I say to her on the date, or where do I take it? You gotta talk to them as normal, and you can't wait. You have to engage and communicate almost immediately, as you were saying before.
transparency, man. And when you're transparent and you don't lie and you're seen as a straight shooter, um, people value that. And the people who don't value that don't matter. They go away because they can't handle the heat.
So if I was to look at your Rolodex, like your phone nowadays, you probably have amassed a lot of contacts. A, from when you were a reporter, and B, just from business. Um, is that just continuously growing? And how do you keep track of all your contacts and the networking that you guys do?
For me personally,
Yeah,
uh,
or as you as a representative of Rebellion.
it's kind of like a collective hive mind. Um, I certainly have my own kind of learned knowledge. What your question at reminds me of when I was just a cub reporter back at the Leader Post and just starting out, and I didn't know anyone and I didn't know anything, and that's after 2 university degrees. And I got to work with Will Chabon, and I was sitting beside him, and I was like, "Will, I'm working on this story, and I can't find so and so or someone to speak to this issue." Will knew everyone, and he almost categorically knew their phone number off the top of his head. It was frightening. And I will never achieve that or get that good. But anytime somebody jokes or talks about Rolodexes, I think of Will Chabon and how generous and kind he was to me. That when I was a new reporter, he would just share information with me. Oh yeah, go call this person. Oh yeah, this person's great about aviation, or go talk to this person with the police, or those kinds of things. For Rebellion, it's very informal. Mark has like this encyclopedic memory, and I just have pages of notes and business cards and Google. It's nothing special, nothing fancy.
But you know who to reach out to, right? That's. I want to. How many phone numbers do you have in your head right now? That you could just call without
3.
hitting 3 buttons. Yeah. I,
30.
I was talking to my wife about this, and I was saying, yeah, like I got 10 because I do, right? I have a big family, and I remember their phone numbers from back before I had a cell phone. And she's like, that's crazy. I don't even remember like my family's. I think that's a thing you don't have to worry about anymore. And everyone's messaging each other on Facebook or using other apps.
I'm spending my brain capacity on something else.
Yeah, absolutely. You only have so much knowledge in there that you could retain. So I'm drinking some coffee just to keep my throat wet, but I actually have a resilience beer, and I'm not going to make a habit of this drinking on the podcast, but when in Rome, talking to you, I've been on your podcast several times, and I would like you to tell me a little bit about this while I crack it open and have some. I've had it before. It's not like I'm doing a dry test run. I'm drinking it because I really enjoyed this one.
Sure. So Resilience Beer was born out of the Saskatchewan Craft Brewers Association. And what that is basically a group of all the brewers in Saskatchewan who've come together to say, hey, we've got something really special going on, but we need a kind of singular voice to talk to stakeholders in government, tourism agencies, stuff like that. When they've got very specific issues they want to talk about, um, from something as simple as, can we have growlers? Back in the day, 5-6 years ago, growlers weren't allowed, and we had to lobby as a group. And it was kind of out of that SCBA was born. So each year, the brewers all come together in the spirit of kind of homebrew collaboration, and they brew a beer together. And this was Rebellion's turn to host. So we said, summer's coming. It's going to be warm. Everybody's going to be ready to hit the patios after a crappy, long COVID winter of lockdowns. And they said, let's make it wheat because wheat is symbolic of Saskatchewan. Let's throw in some oats to make it creamy. And it's got this really nice citrus character to it, really crushable, and probably our most positive, biggest release of 2021 so far. I mean, we got a lot of year left, but the reviews have been amazing. And my wife was even like, you guys just need to brew this year round. And I tell people, it's just one and done. So get it while you can. But man, it's just a great beer.
It's tough to find ones that I don't like. Obviously, I have my own palate, my own tastes, and it's not as refined as normal would be. So I like what I like, and I enjoy your sours, and I enjoy the wheat beers you guys bring out as well. So
very infrequently, we don't do that many wheat beers. I think we started off with the Belgian wit. Maybe we've done 2 or 3 since then, but so this is kind of rare and special. It's not something we're offering all the time.
Well, and how long are you guys going to have this in? Because obviously I'm going to include some show notes and information of where people can find you, Rebellion, and all that.
It's out and about across Saskatchewan, but I would say it's only going to be sticking around for maybe the next 3 or 4 weeks. We've sold out of our inventory in terms of our wholesale capacity, and I think they said the tap room is almost sold out. Like, it went fast. People were really excited. Our social media exploded. For 48 hours, my phone was just vibrating because people were posting pictures and tagging us and just going crazy for it. They just loved it. So it's not here for a long time.
I think you have a community of fans, I guess you could say, around you that love anything you guys do, and they recognize something in Rebellion that makes them want to come back. So that's another thing that you guys are just kicking ass at.
You don't control your fans, right? You put something out there and you hope for the best. And Saskatchewan's really special because we're a small community. All the brewers know each other on a first name basis. And when we have the craft beer festivals or something like that, people can come see me at the tap room, sitting there around the bar having a pint. When we reopen after this COVID nonsense is done, people are still coming up to me and they're going to be saying, "Hey, Matt, how's it going?" I think it's neat. They get to know me on a first name basis, and that's deliberate. We want people to know who Mark is and who our staff are, and to say, "Hey, you're not just some faceless corporation. You're a part of our community. You care about the potholes the same way we do. You care about whether the schools are nice." You know, it's not a grift. It's very deliberate and thoughtful, and we're really focused on doing some great stuff with the community and not just um, wanting to be slick and exploit it. I hope that when people come away from Rebellion, they don't just say the best beer I've ever tasted, but uh, they can feel the magic and the energy of the community and culture. I I really am sad that people can't visit our Disney World, which is the tap room right now. In the next couple weeks and months when we're reopening, they'll get to come back and hopefully that energy comes back because I've missed a lot of people. I've missed a lot of friends who, like you, I just get to Facebook message a little bit and send a couple beer pictures to. Um, but there's something special about sitting around the horseshoe at the
Mm-hmm.
bar and just shooting the breeze.
Yeah, trying new beers is the other thing. Like I'll go in there, and Jasmine or you will be there saying, "Try this one. This is new," and it'll be a limited time, or it'll be something that I'll like because you know what I drink. Anytime there's a sour, I get a text or a message, and hey, come try this now, or there's a limited run, come grab it.
Right.
I appreciate that too. And yeah, I will. I'll always grab it. I'll always pick up way more than I intend to go in for, which I think is the draw of the tap room. You have the couple of fridges there, and you bring some growlers in. So, which growlers are coming back now, right? You're able to do those.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We only stopped filling growlers for about a month, but once the kind of the health regulations and the updates and the information about the virus became more developed, we were able to open up our growlers, and it's just been working. It's been great.
One other thing I wanted to touch on too. You said Saskatchewan's a great place to have that community and that fan base. You guys have expanded out into Alberta, correct?
In a very small, limited way, yes. Um, as you know, there are tons of Saskatchewan people in Alberta, including half of my family. They've moved from Saskatchewan to Alberta, drawn by oil and economics and grandbabies and stuff. They want to be together, and um, so Albertans have been very vocal. They've said, "When are we going to get rebellion?" And we've consistently told them we have no current plans. No
So
current plans.
So have you seen that in your analytics or just general fan base of more people engaging with you out of Alberta?
The Alberta stuff, well, since we've launched, has been insane. Um, we used to get emails every week. Like I mind our inbox and I monitor all our social media. Every single week, we would get requests from Alberta. I would say maybe a few times a month we get requests from BC, and Albertans just have a really aggressive craft beer culture. They're really excited about what's going on, and I think a lot of those Sask expats, they want a taste of home. And when they see us doing something that's really killer, they're really interested in picking it up. And for anyone who's curious, when we launched into Alberta, we said, okay, the first round will go quick because everybody just wants to try something new. They're just excited to try that Zilla, the hazy, the beer geeks will be into it. They'll get it. The real test is, will they buy it a second time? And we just held our breath and we had no expectations. I was like, lower your expectations because Alberta is a tough, competitive beer market, and the reorders are coming fast. and they're blowing out the stock really really quickly, and they're saying send us more, and we're like, we can't.
That's
We got to brew more first.
that's
But
awesome to hear.
Saskatchewan, the market here is growing.
Yeah.
It might get to the point where we can't distribute into Alberta anymore because Saskatchewan is just so thirsty for our product, and I think that will be the case where when the pandemic is over and the restaurants reopen, we're going to see a huge upswing in support local. Um, to kind of dive into deeper on that, I think the pandemic really woke people up to what support local means,
Mm-hmm.
and not just that hollow phrase, but the real what are the things we value and what do we want to see in our food and our drink going forward. And the people are now telling us they want to support local. They're like, should I go to the liquor store or should I just come directly to the tap room? What's better for you? And it's like, for me, I'm like, do what's best for you, do what's easiest. But thank you for the support and thank you for thinking of coming straight to us.
Whatever you can think to help you guys out. Just the thought that counts.
Right. And they're so excited and you feel the energy, and it's really funny is Mark's been doing a lot of these meetings with these really stuffy suit guys, board tables and business suits. And he's like, they won't focus on the meeting. They just want to talk about beer and how excited they are about craft beer. He's like, something's changed in the culture of Saskatchewan. People are awake and they're into it now. They get it. So it's really cool to see how that switch flipped. I thought it was going to happen. I was feeling it in like January 2021. I was like, something magical is about to occur. And then the pandemic happened, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, the fire never went out. The embers are still hot. And now we're just going to blow on them and we're going to create this huge blaze of interest in craft.
Well, it's great to see the support that you guys have had and continue to have. And I have no doubt that that's going to just be a perpetual thing for you. So, and from me and from a lot of people that I know, from the greater community as a whole, my brother-in-law, who, is the Coors drinker, never drank anything other than a light beer that you can get over the counter at whatever nightclubs we had back in the day. He was like, I think I'm going to start drinking more craft beer. Like, tell me about Rebellion. And I'm like, just go try some. And he's picked up a couple every once in a while. And even though it's not what he primarily drinks, he's putting that in between. He's picking up a couple cans here and there. I've got him a growler that I don't know if he's refilled, but I'll kick his ass to make sure he does.
When we started out, it was like a big middle finger to the man. It was we're here doing our own thing, and
hence the name.
Down the door. Yeah. We're rebelling against the way it used to be. We're past that stage of this now. So we took a look and we said, what can we do to introduce and get people excited who are not necessarily traditionally going to go for a Zilla, going to go for a big face melting IPA. They want something that's high quality but also very accessible, and that's why we launched beer !
Yeah,
we pronounce it like the Sega commercial, beer, really fast. And it's a Kolsch, light, crisp, easy drinking, super crushable for summer. And you never know, right? Like, people might just be like, you guys are too weird, and instead people have just gone bonkers, bananas, crazy for it. Zal and Vanessa, this is a secret, by the way. Zal and Vanessa secretly added more batches to the brew schedule. Like, they had their big meeting with all of us, and Mark said, okay, brew this many. And then they went together, they put their heads together, and they said, this is not going to be enough. We need more. So they secretly brewed more. And then as soon as it happened in March, I said, okay, we get our social media posts out, everything was going. And we sold out of beer and ran out for like 4 days.
That's like, nutty.
Oops.
And that's even with the extended from Zal and Vanessa, your brewmasters, for anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah.
I think we could probably geek out forever. It's the same as when I'm on your show or same when I'm at the tap room. I do want to touch on one more thing before I let you go, though. So this podcast is partially something that I took from what you guys do. You were very encouraging to help me out with whatever, the sound stuff or video stuff, anything that I had questions on, which is great. Um, and I just want to talk about your podcast a little more and how
Sure.
effective it is, because I've told you before that you have a website that's almost as strong as Molson Canada when you're looking at some of the back end metrics that we would use to measure SEO. And part of that is the content that you do, because you do awesome, consistent content that keeps people engaged. And that in itself is something that grows the strength of your website, not just your brand. So, give me a little feedback on your podcast and how that's been over the years.
Well, we're in season 3. I'm about to begin editing episode 160. So that's a lot of effort and time. It started out of an idea that I wanted to scratch that journalism itch, and I also wanted to serve the needs of creating and nurturing craft beer community. I wanted to create a show for beer geeks, but that was also accessible to regular people. I didn't want to talk over their heads and get super crazy technical about like Saccharomyces and Pediococcus and yeast attenuation. Those kinds of topics kind of dry eyeballs. It was more about I'm really excited to share this beer with you and give a taste of that taproom experience to the listener. The other piece was let's bring in really interesting people from our community, not just beer people, but others who might have a connection to beer. And that includes academics, musicians, scientists, chefs. Lots of chefs come on the show because food is so important to beer. And we have a core dedicated audience. You know, I would say it's like 100 people never ever miss a single episode, and then you have it spider out from there. For us, I would love to have 10,000 listeners per episode. I don't think that's realistic when you're narrowcasting.
Mm-hmm.
You're serving a very niche audience. But as a business, one of the things that we realized that came from it was that networking piece, or getting to spend time with people in our community in a real deep dive and giving them attention and nourishment, listening to them and learning. And from those interviews, we've been able to create music festivals and special events. We've done special beers, uh, all sorts of fermentation of ideas and collaborations have come out of it. And just because they came on and spent 30 minutes with me on the podcast. Give you an example, we have a really special beer coming up this fall. Not yet announced, but it's going to be a collaboration with Flamingo. And Flamingo, as you know, is a comedian and a drag queen.
Mm.
And she's fundraising for Lulu's Lodge. And Lulu's Lodge is a safe space for kids who have been kicked out of their homes. LGBTQ2S alphabet people who identify as non-cishet who need a safe place to go.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you incorporate beer into that? We don't know, but we figured it out with Flow. And so we've got this sparkly purple beer that turns pink, and it looks like a swirling galaxy. And Flo's super excited and just jacked to get this thing going. And none of that would have happened. None of that knowledge would have exchanged if we hadn't had the podcast. So it's not just about selling to people the idea of beer. It's turned into we're building a community and relationships with our guests, and that's been really valuable. And it's hard to put a dollar value on that, but it's paid off in spades. And I think once Mark and I kind of realized that, we were able to explain that to the other people in the business. And they said, okay, you put a lot of hours, you put a lot of time into this podcast. How do you rationalize it? That's how.
Yeah. Well,
so that's a long-winded answer.
No. It's great. I'd love for you to talk about it more, because it is something that's hard to rationalize for anyone who's kind of looking at the top dollar. But I definitely recognize it as a digital marketer of content is king, man. You want more content that's engaging, that people want to listen to, that's collaborative with other people. and you guys are just killing it. So,
Oh, thanks, man.
and I appreciate having the chance to be on the podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time to help me with this one and being my first guest. Like that was very important that you were the first guest here, and I hope to have you on a couple more times as well. More than a couple,
Oh,
maybe.
cheers, dude. Hopefully next time we can do it in person and have a beer. Still waiting on my second shot, so
Yeah. Oh, and you know that's one thing I do want to kind of bring back the GoPro in the truck, and I think it's fun just to drive around and shoot the shit, having a coffee. Definitely not a beer when you're driving, but yeah. No. So I guess to run things out, where can people find you or Rebellion, or plug something that's important to you?
plug something that's important to me. I would assume if people are already listening to this podcast, they know about Rebellion, but if they don't, it's Rebellion Brewing Co. or Reb Brew Co. on basically all our social media platforms. We've got some really awesome stuff happening this summer with the hop circuit. So if you grab one of the hop circuit maps, you can get a stamp after you purchase a pint at every single brewery, and then you get a special Experience Regina glassware piece that has really sick art. We've got brand new T-shirts for Experience Regina, and we're going to be launching a petition to try to get a Deadpool statue downtown to
Yes.
replace the statue that got taken down this summer. We just thought it would be a little bit more fun and cheeky and irreverent to
Yeah.
have a Deadpool statue. So stay tuned for that.
That's amazing, man. Well, hey, thanks again for being on, and look forward to seeing what you guys have going in the future.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks.